Welcome back to another episode of Seattle Sports Scene. On today's episode, we will take a deep dive into the recent trade that the Kraken made, our analysis so far of Mariners spring training, and what the Sounders have been up to. We will finish the episode with a tribute to Tyler Lockett and address some of the trade rumors surrounding DK Metcalf. Let's get into it.
A drive deep to right field, down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1.
Drops back. He's going to throw down the middle. He's got a man. The ball is caught.
Game over,
It is a
baby.
touchdown. The game is over.
With a shot blocked. Eberle in front for Schwartz. They score! Hey, hey! What do you say? The ground early. Now the cross out to Nord. What a save by Fry!
What's going on, Seattle sports fans? We are back with another episode of the Seattle Sports Scene. It has been a hot minute, almost a month since we've recorded, actually more than a month since we've recorded an episode. We've kind of been in the dead water recently of not much happening with all of our Seattle sports teams, as the Kraken have just been struggling to get things done. The Mariners are just entering some spring training, but before that, obviously pretty quiet. Sounders starting some things off. We'll have something to say about that in just a moment. But yeah, Seahawks in the offseason, that's been pretty quiet. But today, for me especially, as somebody who covers the Kraken, was a very busy day with a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to unpack all of that, as well as some Sounders and Seahawks stuff, and some Mariners stuff coming up for the rest of this episode. Before we begin and dive into the huge news that happened today with the Kraken, we want to talk a little bit about the Sounders and kind of what they've been up to. And my friend here, Seattle Sports Season, is going to get us kicked off on that.
Yeah, so the Sounders just started their season last week. I guess that's 2 weeks ago now. But they are currently competing in CONCACAF Champions Cup and started their play for MLS just at the same time, which has been a little rough. I think the Sounders, they've struggled a little bit to start off the season, starting with just one draw and one loss in MLS play. However, they did take care of Antigua in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. However, that's a team that you should be able to handle from Guatemala. They don't play. The quality of league that Antigua came from, no team in the MLS should be losing to them. So Ryan Schmetzer said it after his post game after RSL, and he was basically like, you can make excuses, but at the end of the day, all that we've done this year is beat a team from Guatemala 2 times. And so there's a lot of questions right now kind of surrounding the Sounders and what's causing their struggles here to start the year. I mean, I went to the game at RSL and they just looked flat out awful. Flat-footed, no pressure. Players just didn't really look like they wanted to be there. And it is true that playing 2 games a week every single week is going to get tiring. However, this is only their fourth match of the season, and Schmetzer was trying to rotate some guys so that minutes weren't adding up super fast. But even still, there's only, besides Pedro de la Vega, Stephen Fry, and honestly, Vargas, I didn't even feel like any of the rest of the guys wanted to be out there on the field. RSL was just out hustling us. They looked like they wanted to be there. It was their home opener. It's tough playing at elevation, especially when you're tired. And the Sounders historically have struggled immensely to win on the road at RSL. So for me, tonight is going to be a huge test. From the time we're recording this, the Sounders will kick off in probably about 40 minutes from now. And there's in the round of 16 match against Cruz Azul, who's one of the best teams in this tournament. However, for whatever reason, they haven't said why. 6 of their 11 starters were left and did not make the trip down to Seattle. Most of those being strikers and midfielders. There's basically only 2 reasons, though, one of which they just don't respect us at all. They don't feel the need to make those guys fly all the way to Seattle for a team or a game that they feel like they can win as it is. Or the other option is they're scared of the turf there in Seattle. And as a team that plays on grass, they're scared of the injuries that could come from playing on the wet turf down there in Seattle. Either way, the Sounders will need to score probably 2 or 3 goals tonight. I expect Cruz Azul to just drop back and defend. They're probably just going to drop 8 and just force the Sounders to try and be tactical and beat them through passing, which is not exactly our strong suit, but hopefully they find a way to get it done and prove that they are ready to play. And if they don't, man, it just gets tough. You play LAFC at home on Saturday after playing this match here on Wednesday. So hopefully the Sounders can have a better week this week. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a rough start to the season. I will say, bright side, the struggles we're seeing are not the same. Historically, the Sounders have struggled to score goals. This offense has not. This offense has looked good. They've been generating opportunities. They've been putting them in the back of the net. They've scored 8 goals in their first 4 matches. And so the new additions look to be doing well. Ultimately, it was a bad mistake at Charlotte and 2 awful own goals, both at Charlotte and against RSL, that are really holding the Sounders back. So I don't think there's any need to overreact yet. Let them keep kind of getting their feet under them, and we'll see what happens from there.
Well, you kind of talked about how the new guys seem to be playing well, but my question I was going to have for you was, can you point out in particular somebody who's new to the team this season, who's in particular maybe playing better than you expected or better than everyone knew on the team, or maybe even just outperforming players who've been on the team for a while? Anybody in that factor that you see that you're like, yep, that was a good choice. They're playing really well.
I wouldn't necessarily, he's not new, but Pedro de la Vega, being his second season here in Seattle, first year was just injuries all throughout. We never really saw him healthy. He never really got into training with the club. Um, he is fully healthy right now, and he is a problem. Even in the RSL game where we looked flat, he was running everywhere on the field, sometimes maybe even a little too much, breaking formation. He's everywhere. He's on the ball playing defense. He's a pest. He's trying to make things happen. He's playing with passion. He's playing with energy. And I think he scored 2 goals so far this year. He looks dangerous. He looks fast. He's quick. And that's basically like getting a designated player, because he is. And that's what Schmetzer said in his post game. He was like, they were asking him about the performance and what that meant for the team. It's like, we got the designated player that we brought him here to be. So if he can keep that form out there on the wing, that creativity and that technical skill is going to be something that's going to help the Sounders be a lot more creative chances this season. And we've already seen a little bit of that through the first 4 matches.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I think he scored. Didn't he score his 2 goals this season? Were in the same match. Was it the first match?
I know he scored 1 against Antigua. And I don't remember if the other one was against the first game against Charlotte. Oh, no. The first game against Charlotte, Morris had a hat trick. So I think he scored 1 in each match against Antigua.
Gotcha. Nice. And then I did have another question for you, because I saw you went to their last game in person. Obviously, not the outcome you wanted, but how was the experience of just being at that stadium? I know it's not Lumen, but what's the experience like being as like a visiting fan of the visiting team at another stadium?
So this was actually my first experience ever being a true opposing fan. I go to Jazz games all the time, but I don't really have an NBA team, so I just am kind of there to watch basketball. But
Mm-hmm.
it was intense, man, and honestly, it was also my first soccer specific stadium that I went to. Um, Rio Tinto was built for RSL. Um, all the view lines are built for soccer. It's not like Lumen where they have a giant third story that's not being used. Um, it has an awesome atmosphere, I will say. The band, the supporters section for RSL. I think it was also just a great day. It was like 60 degrees, and on the first day of March, it was home opener. Um, I think the vibes were just really good at the stadium, and I picked a good game to go to. But I was impressed by just the passion from RSL fans, because I was under the impression that um that I just hear that people talking all the time about MLS fan bases and how they don't really exist and stuff like that. And I was kind of under that impression with RSL just because you don't see a lot of jerseys or stuff in public like you do for the Sounders or even for the Jazz or Utah Hockey Club. But there was fans there that cared a lot. I also got a chance to go say hi to the Sounders supporting section that was there. It was fun to say hi to them and meet some of them, and it was honestly a blast. I enjoyed it a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know because I know Seattle as a Sounders fan base is known well for repping the team's merch, game day or not. I can tell
Yeah.
you that at least when I'm out and about, even if I'm not in Seattle, somebody's gonna be wearing a hat. Somebody's got a scarf on if it's the winter. Somebody's wearing a sweatshirt or an off-brand jersey or a on-brand jersey. And you don't see it all the time, but it's definitely a sport that I feel like not a lot of people pay that much attention to, but when you really pay attention to your surroundings while out, you're like, oh, there's support for this team everywhere in Seattle. So I can definitely imagine the thought of like, is there a good supporting fan base for other teams as well?
I also experienced the hate that other teams have for the Sounders for the
That
first
was going to be
time,
my
and
other
I
question was
don't,
like,
I haven't, I
how's the
haven't.
like the hostileness of like being at another stadium? Like, do teams is this a rival? Do teams dislike the Sounders just in general since we've been good for a long time? Like, what's the hostility there?
So in general, MLS fans don't love the Sounders, but specifically on the West Coast, between RSL, obviously Portland, LAFC, LA Galaxy, even a little bit with San Jose, but not too much with San Jose and Colorado. Um, they do not like us as we have kind of run the Western Conference for a while now, along with LAFC and LA Galaxy. Um, but yeah, they did not like Seattle in Salt Lake there. Had a few F Seattle chants going throughout the game that were not just from the supporter section. It was kind of the whole stadium that was getting behind that. And then I did get some choice words from a few different RSL fans for my jersey choice on the day of the game, but I was expecting that. Honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Overall, a lot of the fans were really nice, and they were just they're like, "Hey, I was wearing the old blue Xbox kit from a while back, and so a lot of fans were like, "Hey, I've never seen that before. Like, that's sick. Like, are you from Seattle?" And it was a good time.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, that kit's a good kit. I like that one.
I'm waiting. The Kraken are going to be here at the end of April, and I'm hoping I can get some somewhat affordable tickets to go and be in a way, go experience the Kraken on the road as well. So it should be fun.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I know tickets for Utah Hockey Club are not super
They're
cheap right now,
insane.
which is crazy because they're in an arena that's not built for hockey at all. I've heard there's some pretty bad seats depending on where you sit that are still expensive.
Yeah, I went to one. I went when they played the Jets.
Mhm.
Yeah, I couldn't see half the ice. I could only see
Although,
one goal the entire game. Um, I mean, I had nothing but good things to say about the experience, though. Like the fans were great, the atmosphere was insane. They did a really good job marketing a team that doesn't have anything to market right now. Um, so I was impressed, but I will say I could not see half the ice for the entire game.
yeah, and it's a good. Obviously, they're not they're not an official expansion team. They didn't do an expansion draft or anything. They just got moved. Obviously, it's just the Arizona Coyotes team and ownership and everything, but they've done a really good job with that marketing for that team. But also, they've done a good job with their season so far. It's been engaging enough, and it's a close enough playoff run that they've gotten fans to really come in and pay attention and have some passion. Unfortunately for them, they got their Utah Yeti name denied
I
because of the,
know.
the Yeti products that had an issue with that. So they're looking at, I think it's Utah Mammoths, Utah like Sasquatch or something, and
It's
then it's
Mammoth Outlaws and
they brought
Hockey
Outlaws
Club.
in. Yeah.
Originally, they didn't include Mammoth, and then a lot of people got mad, so they put it
Mm-hmm.
on the fan vote.
I
Um,
honestly think Utah Outlaws should go. Like that.
I'm
That's a good name, to be honest.
I'm Outlaws or Mammoth. I'm down for
Hmm.
either one of those. But that team, they have some fight, man. They're
Oh yeah.
scrappy. They have some guys on that squad that they do not let stuff fly.
No, no, they're a fun team to watch, and their goaltending is surprisingly good this year. I know that Connor Ingram's not having a solid year, but Vamelka's playing really well. He's not far behind Joey Decord in terms of performance. And speaking of Joey Decord and our beloved Kraken, we got a lot of big news today. If you're listening to this, you've probably already heard what's happened. The Seattle Kraken have made their first trade this week of the deadline, and it's their, I believe, second trade of the season. Obviously, we got a lot of news about this. Let's unpack it all. Since our last recording, the Kraken have not been doing well. Our last recording was on January 25th, and the Kraken have been 5-9-1 since the recording, and are currently holding a record of 26, 32, and 4, and they are 8 or more points outside of a playoff spot, and they are rapidly falling behind teams like the Ducks, who aren't even winning that much, but are winning enough to stay 4 to 6 points ahead of the Kraken. And it's really bringing the atmosphere of the fan base down quite a bit. Surprisingly, Climate Pledge is still filling up. There's still a lot of support. Fans are staying well into the third period before I see them leave if the Kraken are down by 2-3 goals or more, which unfortunately has happened too much.
A quick little plug. Um, if you're in the Seattle area and a college student, so like attending UW or Seattle U or something like that, the Kraken have launched a new student ticket program that basically gives you discounted tickets day of. Um, if you have a valid .edu email. I have a valid EDU email, so I signed up even though I'm not in the state just to see what it was all about. And multiple games so far, they've sent me an email day of being like, "Hey, tickets available for I think they're like $10 actually." Um, and like tickets available for tonight's game, like purchase those up. It's not every game. I think it's basically like if they have unsold tickets before game time, they'll just release them to this population, but it's a cool opportunity. So if you're in the Seattle area, a college student, go get on that because it's basically as cheap as you can get into that stadium for. So
And yes, the team isn't playing well this season, but I can promise you the experience of the arena itself is going to be enough to make it well worth your money, no matter how much you're paying to go see them. It's a beautiful arena with really great fan interaction, and to experience your first hockey game it's hard to put into words. It's incredible. And as somebody, when I went to my first game, I was invited to go with my dad and a friend, and I was like, you know what, sure, I'll go look at this hockey game. I've heard we got a team. It was in the middle of our first season. Like, whatever, I'll go experience it. I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize how big like the NHL was at the time, and I thought it was going to be kind of like an AHL kind of game, like the Thunder, or even WHL, like the Thunderbirds. We get there, we walk in, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an actual arena. But it's incredible. Such a great atmosphere. The games are so much fun, win or lose. And there's great fan interaction. So very, very worth going if you're able to. Back to how our season is going so far. With that, all that being said, Joey Decord is really the sole reason, one of the biggest reasons that this team is being held together right now. But even recently, he's struggling quite a bit with the team playing some pretty terrible defense in front of him, and even like self-screening their own goalie and failing to clear pucks that are sitting out in front of the net, and failing to play physical defense to get players to move away from Joey or not advance towards him. So I obviously don't blame him for some of his recent performances. He's had a couple of struggling games where he's let in 2-3 goals in the first period, but then he's cleaned up for the rest of the game and really held it down together for everyone else. Last night, being the March 4th, after being down 4-1 and having a failed comeback against the Minnesota Wild, falling 3-4, it felt kind of like the last straw. I feel like there were a couple of tweets that went around between agents and between content creators and between people reporting on rumors and such about how, like, okay, there seems to be some calls that are going around. It just felt like something was going to happen today. I woke up today fully expecting a trade. What I did not expect was the team that the trade happened with and the player, one of the two players that it involved. So with just under 48 hours, or over 48 hours of the trade deadline coming up, we have our first trade of the trade deadline week for the Kraken. The primary partner of this trade is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They received Yanni Gourde, who is an ex-Tampa Bay player and a beloved player for that fan base and that franchise. Oliver Bjorkstrand, and a 2026 fifth-round pick from the Kraken. In return, our Seattle Kraken received center Mikey Esimão, who is a top 9 forward, a 2025 second-round pick, 2026 first-round pick, and a 2027 first-round pick. Yes, you heard that correct. We got a second-round and 2 first-round picks for Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand, and a fifth. Right away when I saw this trade, I was blown away. I had to check again and again to make sure I wasn't missing another player we traded or a higher pick. Was there a prospect thrown in there? I was waiting for more news to come out about, like, oh, and the Kraken are also retaining full salary of both players or something like that. But no, there's a secondary partner in the trade, being the Detroit Red Wings, who were given a conditional 2025 fourth-round pick from the Tampa Bay Lightning to retain 50% of Gourde's $5.1 million salary. And the Lightning are taking on Oliver Bjorkstrand's full contract. And it just gets better and better the more that I look at this trade. And obviously, I'm very disappointed to see players like Gourde and especially Oliver Bjorkstrand going, who we did not think was going to be traded at the beginning of the season. And even towards the trade deadline, he was kind of one of those players like McCann and Schwartz, where it was like, I mean, I'd do it if we got a good option to do it, but I'm not planning on it. I don't think I want to trade a player like Bjorkstrand. So I think the Kraken got a steal with this trade. These picks can be used in the draft for 2026 or 2027 for these first-round picks to get some good first-round talent. Obviously, it's going to depend on how well the Leafs play and how well the Lightning play. If they are top team in the league, our first-round pick is obviously going to be lower because of, tanking exists. If you are a worse team, your pick's going to be higher. If you are a good team, your pick's going to be lower, or other way around. So if the Lightning and Leafs both play well next season, we're going to see that be a higher first round pick. And the reason that I say the Toronto Maple Leafs is that 2020, I believe it's the 2020 6 first round pick that we got from them is originally from the Toronto Maple Leafs, so it's going to depend on how they do with that pick. I'll kind of go between the players really quick, kind of just talk about them a little bit. Obviously, it's really rough saying goodbye to these players. Yanni Gourde has been a fan favorite. He's an OG Kraken. And Oliver Bjorkstrand has been a player that the Kraken have been able to rely on playing some solid hockey for them. I've really never had much critique for him. He's put up some fights for us this season as a player who's known to be a non-fighter. And he's an all-star player for us last season. Obviously, it was a rough year, but I think Oliver Bjorkstrand 100% deserved the all-star nomination that he got and won. So looking at Gourde first, Gourde was he was playing his job. He was playing well and doing his job, but his job just doesn't really fit on this team. His type of player is classified as an energy forward, which means he's meant to play physical hockey, bring high energy to the team. He's got aggressive checking. His forecheck and back check is aggressive as well. He's battling for pucks. and getting the puck in good spots for the scorers of the team, and not necessarily getting assists, but just getting the puck out of those bad spots and kind of giving a layup for the rest of the team to be able to do their job. I feel like no one can really argue Gord wasn't doing this. He was aggressive. He hit hard. He battled for pucks along the boards and in the neutral zone. He was always good with his getting pucks into the offensive zone. He brought high energy to the team. He was a great leader. I think he did his job very, very well. Unfortunately for him, it's just not a kind of player the Kraken need right now. We need more goal scorers, which is another reason why a player like Brandon Tanev, who is also an energy forward, is also on our trade block right now. And personally, in my opinion, is somebody who's going to get moved within the next 48 hours. More on that later. Ty Cartier is another player like this, although he's more of a power forward. He has more physical play, but added to that factor is scoring and less of the getting pucks into good spots and battling for pucks. He's more of a get the puck to him so he can take a shot or he's ready for the rebound, but he's also playing aggressive and laying down hard hits. The Lightning need players like Gord, and Gord is a beloved player on this Lightning team. We kind of stole him from them in the expansion draft, even though they didn't protect him. They had other players that were obviously more valuable than Gord, but that doesn't mean the team didn't love him. They just were not able to protect him from the expansion draft. So I know that Lightning fans are thrilled to have him back. I would be too. And I hope that maybe we'll see him in a Kraken jersey again in the future someday with lots of wishful thinking. I feel like because of him being a little bit of a beloved player for the Lightning, they may have overpaid slightly for him. I don't know if he's worth a first-round pick, but regardless, it's what we got for him. And he's a very talented player, so happy for him to be able to go back to his old team. I know he loves it in Tampa. And I wish the best to him. Oliver Bjorkstrand is really tough because he fits really well as a third or fourth line winger on any other team that he's playing with. I obviously loved having him here playing as a second and third liner, even a first liner at times when we had some injuries when we were trying out new lines and rotations. He's really valuable and brings a lot of speed and a good sniping shot to the team. I almost imagine him as like a more agile Daniel Sprong. I feel like they have a lot of the same play style, but I would honestly, for a variety of reasons, pick Bjorkstrand over Sprong. And one of those reasons would be Bjorkstrand plays with a lot more speed and has a lot quicker thinking than Sprong does. With that being said, I still think Sprong is a great player. And to be honest, I still think he should be getting minutes in Seattle, but that's not how ownership is seeing it right now. I'm really disappointed to see him go, but the return that we got for him makes it feel very worth it to me. But I'm going to be honest, I would love to see him in a Kraken jersey again someday. He's a top 3 player for me on the Kraken, so it definitely hurt to see him go. Before I talk about anything else in the draft, did you have any thoughts about Gord or Bjorkstrand or kind of just how they were for this franchise, or any thoughts you have about kind of the value that we got from them from the trade?
No, not really. You kind of covered most of that. Will said, just got my Bjorkstrand bobblehead, the Maestro bobblehead that they came out with a few weeks ago. So that was a little disappointing because that was such a cool bobblehead. But no, I'm curious to hear about who we got in return, because I know we got all those picks, but we also got a center back. So what do you know about the player we got back? And then who do you think he's going to fit with as we try and slot him in?
Yeah, absolutely. So Michael Esimon, or Mikey as he's known, he's an interesting player. He's no doubt a top 9 forward, and really nothing else right now. He was a 5th round draft pick by the LA Kings in 2016, got through development and started playing. He's a 6-year experienced player, and yet his stats look like he's only played a season or two in the NHL. He's got barely over 20 goals. He's got He's got barely over 20 goals. His assists aren't very high either. I'm going to see if I can pull up the exact numbers really quick. Oh, there's another trade that happened. I love trade deadline week. There it is. He's got 21 goals for his career. He's got 29 assists and 50 points in almost 200 games played. His plus minus on the ice is currently at a positive 10. He has potential to be a cheap, reliable option. One thing that Kraken fans will love to hear is that he loves to shoot the puck. Obviously, it seems based off of his stats that he's not always that accurate, but the Kraken have a lot of players, Shane Wright, Ty Cartier, Jaden Schwartz, the list goes on, who sit net front or at least around that danger area of that crease. And he generates a lot of rebounds or bounces off the wall that come out in front of the net. So as long as the Kraken, obviously this isn't like, oh my gosh, we got the player who's going to unlock the potential of the rest of our players. It's not really what's happening here. But as long as the Kraken can learn to be more aggressive for the puck in front of the net, which they've done a pretty good job of so far, he could be valuable in the sense that if he's shooting a lot more, being a high percentage shooting player, he's gonna develop a lot of rebounds for us, or at least a lot of frozen pucks that give us a face-off in the offensive zone. He's got a good net front presence, and he's got pretty good hands with the puck. I've seen a couple of his goals, and they've been kind of awkward goals at times, but he's got really good hands with the puck.
Huh. So I have a few questions.
Did you have something you were going to follow up with?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I looked up 5 goals, 5 assists on the season for 10 points. Do you think this was more of we just are going to need players to take minutes as this season ends, and most likely he's going to be competing for a spot next year? Or do you think this was someone that when Ron Francis made the trade, he specifically looked at him and was like, there's something there that he liked that would have fit with the Kraken?
So I don't have an exact answer because I have some thoughts, but I don't have an exact answer. I haven't looked at the Tampa Bay Lightning's roster space, so I don't know if this is the case, but I think there's a few things that come into play here. One, if you trade Bjorkstrand and Gore, those are 2 spots you have to fill. And we've seen, obviously, the Kraken recall Mitchell Stevens and Jacob Melanson from Coachella Valley. Melanson's going to get his NHL debut hopefully soon. I think this is one of those Logan Morrison, Ryan Winterton moments from last season where you call up somebody who hasn't played the NHL yet or has played very limited minutes and see how they can do. I think we sent Ben Myers back down to Coachella. I don't remember, but if we haven't yet, yeah, we did. We sent him back down last night because Gord was activated. I feel like acquiring Esimon is because I think the Tampa Bay Lightning needed to take a player off of their roster to make space for Gordon Bjorkström. And on top of that, I think the Kraken wanted to bring in a player who could just eat up minutes for the rest of the season so we don't have to keep Mitchell Stevens or Jacob Melanson or Ben Myers or anybody else to come play minutes for us in Seattle, especially if you do that and you don't have you lose that depth. So if Ben Myers gets hurt or somebody else gets hurt and Ben Myers has to play 3rd line minutes or something, and then Mitchell Stevens is playing on the 4th line or Jacob Melanson or something, this is good to keep our depth intact so we don't have to keep calling up players from Coachella in the event that something happens where we have to switch out players and we don't have a depth piece to fill that gap. So I think he's going to eat minutes this season for the team. I think if he plays well, we could bring him back next season, but I think there's a pretty high chance if we do that, he's going to just end up in Coachella. If we put him there in the beginning of the season, he will not, or if we put him there at the beginning of the season, he will be on waivers because he doesn't have an entry contract. However, or he has a one-way contract, not two-way. I don't know if he's going to be here next year. I think this is probably just a depth piece, and he could be somewhere else next year.
I mean, the Kraken are essentially in ultimate prove it mode right now. They don't really have anything left to play for, so it kind of makes sense. And you need people to go out there and finish the rest of the season. So hopefully, for the sake of his career, and is his contract expiring after the season?
Yeah, this will be his last. He's getting paid $800K. He's on a second year of his deal, so he'll be a UFA next season.
So hopefully for him, he can perform well here and hopefully find a nice home next year. And we'll cheer him on while he plays the last 20 or so games. Are we really at like 20 games left?
Yeah, we've got under 25 games left to play in the season. The trade deadline is so interesting because in other sports it's in the middle of the season, and in hockey it's at the end of the season. It's really just a way for playoff teams to get that final push they need. This is why so many times you see players, and I'm trying to think of examples right now off the top of my head, but this is why so many times you see players get moved from a team to a struggling team or to a tanking team. They get moved to these cup competitors, these playoff pushers. They'll play out through the playoffs, and then they won't come back the next season. Is the team can't afford to keep them, but they hold on to them through the playoffs in hopes that it will help them win a cup. Very often, though, you don't see those players return. And I was talking to you before we had started recording about the Martin Necas Mikko Rantanen trade. There's a very big likelihood that if the Carolina Hurricanes trade Mikko Rantanen, which, yes, there are rumors that they might do it at the trade deadline. If they do this and get some value back for him, he could potentially end up on a team that's another competitor that can't pay him next season, and he'll be a free agent again, and then he'll go back to Colorado, who could afford to re-sign him again. So it could go full loop. It could be the biggest robbery of the last few seasons that I've seen. That would be insane to have Martin Necas and Mikko Rantanen on your team, and Carolina gets nothing but a first-round pick out of it, which would be insane. Carolina would have just gotten robbed there if that's the case.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, Esimon, he's going to be interesting to watch for a little while. I don't know if he's going to do much. There's a huge likelihood he's going to come on this team and record a couple of assists and get no goals. But I don't know. He's an interesting player. The majority of his shots come from the middle of the ice and right out in front of the crease. He'll mix well with players like Ty Cartier, Matty Beniers, Shane Wright, Capo Kakko, and Andre Burakovsky, if Burakovsky can actually give him some good passes. And that's not to say he's going to play with those players all the time. He's obviously not going to be on a line with Matty or Shane or Capo. But if he's ever on the ice at the same time between line shifts, or if he for some reason is playing on the PK or power play, I think he'll mix well with players who can dig the puck out of behind the net scenarios, and while he's sitting in his net front middle of the ice spot, he could get a good shot on net. It would be the most new to the Kraken player. It would be the most new player to the Kraken thing ever for him to score a goal in one of his first 3 games with the Kraken and then not score again for a long time. As we've seen that happen time and time again, looking at you, Daniel Sprong and Tomas Tatar. But it's definitely something that I'm going to be looking forward to see how he plays with the rest of the team.
Speaking of prove it, guys, can we just take a second to shout out Shane Wright and how incredible he's been playing lately? I swear every game he's getting an assist, a goal. He's everywhere in the box score, and he still is not getting the ice time that he probably should be getting at this point in the season, where the Kraken are. We were just talking about minutes eating. Why are we minute eating when we have a possible generational type talent who's still playing at 14:30 a game?
No, absolutely. And I feel like we were just talking about it. Esimon is not going to eat minutes, really. Another reason to be happy about this trade is that's less minutes that Gordon Bjorkstrand are taking and more minutes that are going to be given to Shane Wright Esimon and Shane Wright. Really, I
In an
imagine that.
ideal world.
Yes. Well, I mean, who else are you going to give minutes to on this team? If Brandon Tanev's going to, like, you're going to give more minutes to Ty Cartier when he comes back, or you're going to give more minutes to I can't even think of our fourth line right now. Our fourth line is kind of weird. Who is it? It's I know Eberle's playing on the fourth line right now because he's still kind of recovering from his injury. Stevens, Eberle, because Gord is gone. Oh, Tanev, duh. But like, you're not going to give more minutes to Tanev. You're not going to give more minutes to Burakovsky. So I imagine Shane Wright and Ellie Tolvanen are going to benefit from being able to get more minutes here with those two players gone. I'm trying to look at. I know Emerald City Hockey posted last night when Shane Wright had an assist or a goal. They posted his stats since.
I was looking yesterday. It's like 13 points in his last 11 games or something like that.
Yeah, it's basically since the day that he got benched for like 3 games in a row, he's basically been an unstoppable force of nature since then, especially with assists. And I mean, the goals are still to come. He's going to keep scoring. I think next year, like, be ready, Kraken fans. Like, the future looks bright right now. Obviously, the current present looks pretty bleak, but I think next year we're in for a mean surprise of Shane Wright possibly opening the season being one of the fastest players on our team to score 20 goals. Like, I think everything's just clicking for him more. I think he realizes the dire need for him to be playing better. I think he's a lot more comfortable playing with Maddie and Capo, even though they're on another line from him. I think he's a lot more comfortable playing with them, knowing that the pressure's not just on him to do well, but also he's sharing that pressure with Maddie and Capo, who are working well as a duo, with Shorts, who's playing really well recently, with McCann, who's not really scoring anymore, but he's still getting those assists and still getting those shots up for the team. And I think that's taking a lot of pressure off of him, and he's being able to really just settle into his role as somebody who's supposed to be effective on the power play, somebody who's supposed to be effective on breakaways, somebody who's supposed to be effective in all aspects of the offense. And I think he's going to settle in really well to that next season.
Yeah, especially and like as a team right now where the future is kind of uncertain, you don't really know all that much what's going to be happening. This is really an opportunity for Shane Wright to just grab a hold and take control of the team. Like, there's not really a clear. I mean, Matty Beniers was paid, but he's not ever really going to be the point production player, that star that we need him to. But it's an opportunity for Shane Wright to be like, go take it, man. Like, be the face of the team, you know? Like, go out there and just play hockey, the game that you love, and see what happens. And I really think that we're starting to see him play with that confidence that he needs to be having.
No, absolutely. I agree. I am laughing so hard right now, man. Really quick segue. I'm looking at the Firebirds game. Victor Osman is playing in Coachella Valley today. For those of you who don't know, he's the starting goaltender for the KC Mavericks, and he's one of our, I'm not going to say top goalie prospects, because he's not really supposed to be in Seattle at any time. He's kind of just a depth piece. He's a young Alex Steska, but he's getting a chance to play in Coachella Valley tonight. He gets scored on in like the first shot of the game. It's 1-0 Wranglers, a team that I hate and despise. Since that goal, the Firebirds have not stopped scoring. It's 8-1 Firebirds going into the third, and Daniel Sprong recorded a hat trick in 5 minutes. Like, this is again why I'm seeing, like, why are we trying to like trade out the? I don't understand why he's in Coachella Valley. I understand he had a little bit of like an attitude issue towards the team, and he wanted more minutes. I totally get it. He's not quite old yet. I think he's 29 years old, and he's a player who knows what he needs to do, and I think plays well on the ice. Just hasn't really gotten a good opportunity or very many minutes, really, or even games. He was a healthy scratch for a bit too. But I don't know. This guy just recorded a hat trick in 5 minutes. We got Ty Cartier has assisted on like 5 of these goals. Looks like 3 of these goals. This is crazy. But anyway, that's crazy. Daniel Sprong hat trick in 5 minutes is not what I had on my bingo card for tonight. Okay, wrapping up a little bit. Last little bit of info about the picks. The first and second round pick that we got from the from the Tampa Bay Lightning. One of them obviously coming from the Maple Leafs to the Lightning, and then it came from the Lightning to us. Last thing that needs to be known about these picks is they're what's known as a protected top 10 picks, which basically means that if the Maple Leafs and Lightning in 2026, 2027, whoever has that pick, if they are both top 10 teams when the year of the pick that we have from them happens, obviously it means the value is going to be not bad, but worse. Excuse me. It means that the pick is going to be higher up in the first round than it is going to be. Obviously, like, they're not tanking. We're not going to get a top first round pick from them because they started tanking. It's going to be higher. They're going to be contenders next season and the season after. What a protected top 10 pick does, and there's different conditions for them. Ours happens to be if both of those teams become top 10 teams and make our first round pick less valuable, a third round pick from those teams is automatically thrown in to the deal and to the mix, which basically, we get a third round pick. On top of the first round, it doesn't turn the first into a third. It doesn't take away from us. It basically just gives us another third round pick from both of those teams, which is absolutely insane and really cool to see how that is going to work. Lost you there for a second. You back? Yeah, I can hear you. You're a little bit delayed on the video side, but that's all right. I don't know if you see me talk about this today, but I basically just really quickly explained the top 10 picks, protected top 10 picks. Basically, if
That's
the Leafs
really
and
cool.
Lightning over the next 2 years are top 10 teams in the league, we automatically get a third from both teams because it will make our first round pick less valuable, if that makes sense, because it's going to be a higher
From
pick.
each team?
Yeah, so because of the protected top 10 pick conditions
Wow.
that we agreed with the Lightning, if those teams over the next 2 years are top 10 players, we get an additional third round
Which
pick thrown in.
the Leafs should be a
really
top 10
useful for
team
us.
next
So
year.
we're either
That
really
would be
from each team. So I believe the
shocking if they
2026
weren't.
first round pick is from the Leafs. So next year, if the Leafs are a top 10 team, we're going to get a third round pick also. Next year, they should. Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And the 2027, the 2027 first round pick, if the Lightning
Already
are a
hate
top
the
10
Leafs.
team, we'll get a third round pick thrown in. So we're either really hoping that both teams are terrible or that both teams are good. So you're kind of either a huge hater of those teams or a big fan of those teams over the next 2 years. Right? You almost can't like the Leafs. They're like the Cowboys and the Dodgers of the MLB. Oh yeah, I know why. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Definitely. Okay. Last thing to close out the Kraken, because I know we still want to talk about Mariners a little bit and talk about Seahawks. Who else could the Seattle Kraken trade before the trade deadline is over? Looking at a few players here, I think Brandon Tanev is going to go, and I think he needs to go. I love Turbo. He's a cool guy. He is absolutely useless on this team. He is eating up $5 million or $3 million. 5? 3? He's eating up a lot of money, regardless, on his contract. And he does not help this team in any way other than laying out hits and occasionally getting a breakaway that he completely misses the net on or just falls over while he's trying to. He's almost like an improved version of Andre Burakovsky. It's just, he's so hard to watch right now. And obviously, no hate to my man. I love him. He's a cool guy. He's just not it for this team. And I think he needs a new environment. He needs something different to kind of help his gameplay. So I imagine he's going to go to the Maple Leafs, I think. I think he'll reunite with his brother, Chris Tanev. And I think we'll either get a low prospect and a pick or a pick for him. I imagine that we'll probably retain 50% of his salary to get that pick. So it's not like a 5th rounder or 4th rounder. I imagine we get probably like a 3rd or 4th with retained salary. But I'm obviously no expert. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he even goes to the Leafs or even gets traded at all. I still hope he does. Jamie Alexiak is on my list as well. I could see a team like the Jets or the Stars taking him. Alexiak really hasn't played bad this season, but I think he could clear up a lot of space for us, salary cap wise. And I also think that you could get some picks for him. Or I almost wonder if you could try to get the Stars to give you one of their top prospects. The name evades me right now, but he's basically Jamie Alexiak, but he's playing in the AHL right now. His potential is supposed to be a little bit higher than Alexiak's, but he's the same kind of build, and he is a defenseman, but he's kind of more of an offensive defenseman, whereas Alexiak is kind of a stay-at-home defenseman. But Alexiak's build and stats are deceiving. He's not as good as his build, as his height and size tells you. You'd think somebody of his height and size is just checking players all the time, fighting for pucks, being aggressive. And as Kraken fans, we know Alexiak's a lover, not a fighter. He's not somebody who's going to be doing that as much as he should be with the kind of height and size that he has. Players who we should trade, I think it's those two. Players who we could trade, Josh Mahura is on there. I would really only take calls if it's a 4th round pick or better for him. Even still, I feel like he's somebody that you could extend next season at a very low price, and he'd come back and play. He's been solid for us this year. I'm still waiting for him to get his first goal with us as a Kraken. Mahura, who else was I thinking about? A little bit of a surprising twist, but you could trade Jaden Schwartz right now for a 1st round pick to a contender. I guarantee you there's a contender out there who would gladly take a 3rd or 4th line or 2nd or 3rd line winger in Jaden Schwartz to help them with their playoff push. And I guarantee you they'll give a 1st round pick for him. I could see a team that's a wild card team who desperately needs some help scoring, or I could see a team that is a playoff cup contending team who really needs someone to help them boost their offense in many ways to push to that playoffs. Really just add a good amount of depth for them. So I can't think of any other players that we could or should trade. Obviously, Ron has said he's not really taking calls on McCann. Although if you're offered something above McCann's value, you probably have to take it. But I don't think McCann should get moved. I don't think he will get moved. I think he's going to stay at Kraken. I think he should stay at Kraken. But yeah, I think to close out the Kraken segment, I just want to say a quick thing for the fans to know. Like I said earlier, the present's kind of bleak right now. This has been one of the worst seasons that we've had to watch. It's very reminiscent of our first season and how we just did not play well, bottom of the standings kind of thing. The future is very bright. We have a top 10 prospect pool with players like Berkeley Catton, Jacob Figger, Clark Caswell, Jagger Furkis, Yanni Nyman. There's so many. Like the list goes on. I could continue to tell you about all the players that we have coming through our prospect pool that are going to be incredibly talented, that are going to be so much fun to watch. Edward Shawley, forgot about him. Can't forget about him. And we have players like Ryan Winterton, who have shown a lot of promise when he comes up and plays for us in Seattle. The future's bright in the prospect pool. I trust Ron Francis and his decisions. I can't think of one trade I've seen him make that I did not like. Minus maybe the Tatar trade. Was a little bit of a... We didn't give up much for him, but I felt like it was kind of a useless trade. I am very excited for the future of this team to see where how everything lays out. And I think that with these picks that we now have and with what else we're going to get in return for players that we trade this season, at this deadline coming up, I think we're going to have a lot of ammunition to be able to throw at other teams to pull in some pretty big superstars, or at least some reliable, well-known names to come in and play in a Kraken jersey. And I'm very excited for that. I think somebody asked me today, what's your ideal outlook over the next 5 years? And I think you spend the next 2 years preparing your prospects to come up and play. And that doesn't necessarily mean tanking, but it also doesn't necessarily mean a deep playoff run. I imagine that Berkeley Catton next season is playing in Coachella Valley. And I think that he'll probably get a call up to Seattle next season as well, just to see how he does. But I imagine he's full-time in Seattle in 2 years, 3 years minimum, or maximum, excuse me. So I'm very excited to see him play in Seattle. And obviously, you keep going on with the amount of prospects we have. Joey and Coco are going to be a great duo in about 2 years or so. So this franchise has hope, promise, and I'm very excited to see where the future is for this team. But don't be. I've seen so many fans be so disappointed with the team and just be like, and we're going to suck for the next 5 years. Like, absolutely not. This team is not going to suck for the next 5 years. We're going to figure out everything. And I see a playoff run in over three of the next 5 years. And I don't say that to be optimistic. I say that with real confidence that this team will be a playoff team, or at least a playoff bubble team in 3 of the next 5 years. So don't lose hope. Keep watching, keep rooting, and keep staying in touch with the team and everything that they do. So that's all I've got for the Kraken. I know you kind of blipped out there again, so you kind of missed that. But anything from you about the Kraken before we?
No, my Wi-Fi is
talk
just
about everything else?
self-destructing right now, so we gotta switch over to the Mariners here.
If you blip out again, I'll see if I can.
Yeah,
cover
well,
you,
there's not a ton to cover with the Mariners, as I am someone who just doesn't really buy into spring training at all. I think it's great for players. I don't care about final scores. I don't care about records. I don't really care about an outing where a pitcher gives up 8 runs, because that just happens in spring training. And you never know. You look at player stats, you'll be like, oh, they're hitting 500. And it's like, it's been 12 ABs, and they faced 2 pitchers that were at their highest in Double A last year. Like, I hope that our players are hitting guys that are in Double A. But I will say it has been fun, and there are a few things to talk about surrounding the Mariners, and there is some value to spring training stats, especially as we have a few positions where we're looking at position battles and players that are trying to make the roster. So I'll just go through each position here real quick and just talk about kind of what's going on. Outfield, obviously certified. Your backup outfielder is most likely going to be Mitch Haniger. I'd be very shocked if the Mariners do not have Mitch Haniger on their opening day roster. That being said, Dom Canzone has had a good spring so far. Your boy, Cade Marlowe has also played well. Samad Taylor has also played exceptional. Yeah. And so those are all guys that maybe you could see get in the mix, but I would expect it to be Mitch Haniger, and then I'm interested to see what they do with their last bench spot, because you can take Canzone if you want another outfielder, but you also will have Victor Robles, Julio, Randy, Luke Raley who can play outfield, Mitch Haniger, Dylan Moore who can play outfield. I don't know if you need another outfield only on top of that. But if they do choose to take one more outfielder, I'd expect it right now to be Dom Canzone. Other outfielders that have just shout out to Laz Montez, who is just a beast. Hit one off the end of his bat that got out, hit another one dead center, just a tank. It's been fun to watch the young guys come in and get some ABs towards the end of the games. You're not going to really see that as much now that we're approaching like the game 15-ish mark. You're going to start seeing the major league guys stay in there through the 6th or 7th inning over the next week or two, and then eventually they'll be playing the full game. And they're going to really start only playing guys that they see as potential roster fits come opening day. So, but shout out to those minor leaguers who got called up from minor league camp. They've been fun to watch, and they've really brought the energy in some crazy games. So next, I would say, well, catcher obviously is going to be Cal Raleigh and Mitch Garver. Mitch Garver's had a great spring. Um, Really love to see him. He's not chasing, which is really promising. He's pulling the ball, hard hit singles. Again, it's all spring training, so it doesn't really mean anything, but it is promising to see him just be a little more confident up there at the plate. Uh, Also, shout out Harry Ford, who's someone that maybe could see the major league roster this year if an injury happens and that's the route they want to go. I would still say expect to see him in Seattle next season. I would say most likely scenarios that Harry Ford never plays a game in a Seattle uniform and is traded somewhere at the deadline during this season. Um, but he's a fantastic player who has also had a great spring. Um, First base. Now this is where things start to get interesting because you have initially I was basically it's going to be Luke Raley and Donovan Solano, and that was kind of that. Tyler Lockett exists, however, we still have seen a lot of the same issues with him, struggling with strikeout percentage, just whiff rate in general. He has incredible power, but he just struggles to make bat to ball contact at points. Um, but the Mariners signed Rowdy Tellez to a minor league deal, which has been a really interesting option that they've been playing him a lot over at first base. And Austin Shenton has also played some first base. So I would still anticipate it being Luke Raley. But I feel like I would love to see Rowdy Tellez get a chance as someone who had a solid season last year with the Pirates. Um, I believe he hit 20 home runs and hit 240, which on by Mariner standards is like third best hitter in our lineup based off last season. But he obviously strikes out a lot. I think that's what they're scared about. The defense isn't great. He doesn't really give you any other value besides his bat. Um, but that is someone who could potentially crack the roster on opening day. Second base, I think Ryan Bliss is starting to show that he's going to be the starting second baseman. Cole Young, some people had talked about, but Ryan Bliss has outperformed Cole Young to this point in the spring in basically a head-to-head race. And Dylan Moore has not played fantastic, and obviously Dylan Moore will make the team, but I would still prefer them to use Dylan Moore as a utility man on the bench coming in to steal bases and play defense at the end of games rather than being an everyday starter. So I think that Ryan Bliss will be the opening day starter as of right now, and I could not be more excited about that because I love Ryan Bliss. Last year when I heard he was getting called up, I bought tickets day of, drove down to Seattle to go watch him play. It was amazing. I hope he keeps playing well because I think he could be a huge piece for us at the bottom of the lineup this year. So shortstop is JP Crawford. He's been JP Crawford throughout the spring. Um, Not really anything to read. It's a vet in spring training. Not really anything to talk about. Third base is probably at this point it's Jorge Polanco. However, Jorge Polanco kind of late to spring training or just late to getting games. He was here on time, but he has only played in one game, and that was at DH so far. Um, they've been playing Solano at third as well, but the talk of surrounding the Mariners right now in third base has been Ben Williamson and his performance up until this point in spring training. This is a guy who can play third base, second base, and shortstop. He has a Gold Glove level defense. If he was to crack the opening day roster, he could be someone that could win a Gold Glove with consistent playing time this year. Like his defense is MLB ready and it's elite already. But he's really shown so far through spring training that his bat is also ready to be in the MLB, and that's something that a lot of people have gone excited about. Again, It's spring training. I don't read too much into it, but it's been really fun to watch Ben Williamson. And I hope that the Mariners continue to play him. We'll kind of see where Dan Wilson is starting to lean as spring training continues, just with who's starting, who's coming into games, late in games, who's just getting playing time in general. But as of now, Ben Williamson has been getting a lot of time along with Ryan Bliss, Dom Canzone, Rowdy Tellez, all these guys who are sort of competing for one roster spot at this point. I mean, actually, I would say two roster spots. I think, in my opinion, I don't think Leo Rivas is all that much better than any of those guys that I just mentioned. Um, I think a lot of people kind of have forgot that he existed. He's been hurt. He hasn't been playing much in spring training. Um, and so I think there's two roster spots available for all those guys as potential like bench pieces slash fringe starters. So we'll see. It's competition is good. It forces everybody to play better. It forces everyone to practice harder when you know you got a young guy right on your tail, especially in the scenario of someone like Jorge Polanco. You know Ben Williamson is right there waiting in the wings if you start to struggle in the major league level. So it's exciting to see a lot of these young guys that we've been hearing about in games. But again, it's spring training and none of it really matters until we get to opening day in just about 3 weeks from now. So I've had a blast though watching a lot of these guys. I'm kind of a minor leagues guru of sorts. I love following Mariners minor league. Um, I love. I'll literally sometimes just sit down at night after a Mariners game and watch a Modesto Nuts game. And just watch some of the guys down there. I think there's a lot of fun and knowledge to be had in minor league of baseball. And so it's been fun to see those guys at the major league level, even if it's just spring training.
I don't pay a huge amount of attention to spring training. I wish I did, and I wish I don't know. I'm one of those people who just hasn't. I've spent more attention than normal, than past seasons on spring training, but it's just not really my thing for baseball minor league to like pay that much attention to all the prospects and stuff. And also, like, if you follow me on Instagram, and obviously if you listen to this podcast, you
Yes.
know I'm not a very optimistic Mariners fan. Uh, I should be, and there's a lot to be excited about for this team, but I'm very, call it pessimistic. I would call it
Pessimistic.
realistic about this team, and I don't think they're going to be very special. I don't think they're going to be very special, and I think we're in for another year of some pain and frustration. So we'll see. I love the starting rotation of this team. I think our prospect pool is great. I am excited for Montez. I'm really excited for Ryan Bliss. And I obviously love Dom Canzone, so I'd love to see him play well also. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate the players of the Mariners. I'm pissed off with management, and I don't think we're going to get anywhere with the kind of roster that we have. But I'm excited for baseball, regardless. I'm excited to watch some baseball. I've missed the sport. I've missed going to the games.
It's going to be exciting, that's for
I'm
sure.
excited.
I'm optimistic, as you know. I choose to try and have as much joy surrounding this team as I can. I think right now our fan base is really, really toxic. And I've talked to some of you guys that listen to this about it on Instagram and in person, and I think that there needs to be some people right now that choose to be excited about this team and just support the players. Don't hate the players because they, as you saw, I'm sure some of you guys saw the Justin Turner quotes that came today. Just bashing Mariners ownership. Like the players know, the players are frustrated. So don't take your frustration out on the players because at the end of the day, it's not their fault that ownership doesn't go out and get guys. So choose to support the players. You can hate ownership all you want, and that's well deserved. But just be there for the team, and I still think that they could be great this year, despite this lineup that appears to be lackluster.
Yeah, we'll
Only
see.
time will tell. You got anything else before we do a little bit about the Seahawks?
I'm good. Let's roll into some very
The
depressing news.
Seahawks have released Tyler Lockett. My childhood watching Tyler Lockett, I mean, honestly, I can't even comprehend what's going to be like to watch a game without Tyler out there. An amazing football player, someone that perfectly resembles what it means to be a good human being as well. Um, a guy that's built his life in Seattle. He just got married. He has a real estate business that he runs here. A Seattle man through and through. It's unfortunate that it had to come to the end like this. Unfortunately, he was just not worth the money that he was being paid. And don't get me wrong, I do not have any hate towards the Seahawks front office for making this decision. It's 100% the right decision when you have, at the end of the day, football is a business, and you can't see those players for who they are. That at the end of the day, they're just names on a piece of paper with a money sign attached to their name and stats attached to that money sign. And Tyler Lockett was not producing at the money sign that he had, and so he ultimately had to be cut for the betterment of the team. But that doesn't mean it's not going to suck. I'm seeing him play on a different uniform because I'm sure he'll be able to get a contract somewhere. I even not ruling out him coming back to Seattle on a cheaper deal. But yeah, I love Tyler Lockett, man. I'm going to miss him. An amazing career here in Seattle. Consistently in his prime, year after year, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. He never really had any personal accolades to show for his career. But every year he was consistently under the radar around 1,000 yards. Surest hands in the league, almost never dropped a pass, and was kind of the secret sauce there for a while, him and Russ. So I'm going to miss him. What are you thoughts on the Tyler Lockett situation?
Disappointed. I was pretty optimistic that something was going to work out, and something obviously still could work out. I think growing up, watching him and Russ connect as a duo was one of the greatest things that I got to watch when it comes to sports. Um, I loved who Tyler is as a person, as a player, somebody who really inspired me as a player when would play football. I never did tackle, but I did do flag, and for a while I was not a good player. And part of it was because of I was a lot shorter than a lot of the kids in the league that I was playing, and I struggled to get up, be able to go get the ball, and for that reason, constantly got beat by the defense. And I remember growing up watching him play, and I was like, "Hey, Tyler's like, look at how small he is next to the other players. He's doing great." And I, like, no joke, would watch videotape of Tyler Lockett playing football, and not well, but I would try to put it into my own gameplay, and it worked a little bit. And I had a much better final few years of playing football in a league, competitive football league with my friends. Yeah, he's just a huge inspiration to me in more ways than just sports, in all aspects of life. And is one of the few Seahawks players that I've met. I got to meet him during training camp at one point back in 2017, I think. Everybody ran over to go meet Russ, and I looked down the line and was like, Chris Carson and Tyler Lockett are chilling over there, and nobody's talking to them, so I'm going to go get their autographs. So I skipped out on maybe getting Russ's autograph for getting Chris Carson and Tyler Lockett and Bo Scarborough, but nobody really remembers him. But yeah, it's disappointing, but I'm not gonna lie. I hope that he gets somewhere to play, but there is a small part of me that kind of hopes that he'll either come back and play in Seattle, or he'll just retire as a Seahawk and didn't play for any other teams.
For sure. And in a league right now that wide receivers are built on just being giant freaks of nature like DK or AJ Brown or Jamar Chase, where these guys are just built, they're fast. He's really one of the last of like a dying breed of receiver. He's one of the smartest receivers I've ever seen. His ability to just feel out where the soft spot in his zone was is incredible. Like Tyler Lockett running a little curl on 3rd and 7, just sitting in between the cover two, in between the two linebackers, it was so consistent every time. Just quick curl, Russ hits him, and so first down, he just falls to the ground as soon as he catches the ball, and that was his game, and his game was incredible. And I even see we saw some of that as he taught JSN last year. You kind of saw JSN starting to learn more about how to find soft spots and defenses from Tyler, even DK a little bit. Um, he's just such a smart guy. I could see him being a coach one day, a great human being, and really, really gonna miss him. The other side of the Seattle wide receiver room right now.
Yeah, he's
Yeah, what
not
were
the
you gonna say?
fastest. I was going to say he's not the most fast receiver. He's not the biggest receiver. He's not, but he splits defenses really well, and that's something that's also awesome to see about him. Is just sometimes I watch him run routes, and I audibly with my parents or my family watching him like, how did he beat that receiver? Like he's not juking like crazy, and he's not using insane speed. It's just the way that he runs his route and shifts just confuses defenders so often, and it's just a beauty to see. And there's one more thing I was going to say too about him, but I'm starting to forget about what it was I was going to say. Oh, and the fact that his toe tap catch against the Rams on that primetime game is without a doubt 90% of NFL fans would agree with this. If you don't, you don't know ball. That is a top 10 catch of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was an
That toe
insane
tap catch.
catch.
Like you cannot get any closer than that to the sideline. You cannot get any closer than that to how beautiful the catch was. Like it's a top 10 catch of all time. Personally, I'd say top 5, but I'll settle for top 10 since I know there are a lot of monumental catches that have happened throughout the NFL's existence. So, sorry, I'll let you say what you were going
real
to say
quick,
about the
and
rest of the
then
receiver
wrap
room.
up here as this is kind of long, but DK Metcalf has requested a trade from the Seattle Seahawks. Will this happen? We don't really know. We don't really know. We know that a little bit of conversation has been had with the Packers, but not much beside that. I'm still gonna withhold talking from that and about that until it actually happens. Um, I'm still kind of under belief that they're gonna hold on to him at least until the middle of this season. Um, I'd be still surprised right now if DK Metcalf gets traded.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to happen. I part of me almost hopes that it happens so that we don't have to have the hangover of that drama. And I don't know if it's going to cause any locker room issues knowing that he requested a trade and didn't get it. But we'll see. I also don't kind of want to refrain from saying too much until we know more
Well,
information about it, since we don't know
that's
that
all
much.
for me. Anything else?
That's all from me as well. It's been a heck of an episode, an hour, closing on an hour and 20 minutes. So if you made it to the end of this episode, you are a legend. And thank you so much for listening to the whole episode. As always, if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas, or anything that you want to talk to us about, please message our page on Instagram at Seattle Sports Scene. Please message me, that Kraken fan, on Instagram. Or my friend here, that Seattle Sports Season, as he has been terrorized by his internet again, and he's been disconnected from the call once again. We'll get that fixed for next episode. So, again, guys, thank you so much for listening. We love doing this podcast. We're so sorry it's been a while since we've had an episode come out. And as soon as we've got baseball season starting up and we got the closing of the NHL, going to have a lot of news to talk about. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode. Have a great rest of your day. See you later.